Hi gang, welcome to our Friends Together page. If you're new around here, my name is Kathy Robinson Pickett and I am the founder and the director of Friends Together. Friends Together is a NGO, 501c nonprofit based in Florida that does work around the globe. We initially started as an HIV foundation. I am HIV positive. I was raped and infected with HIV, and so I've been HIV positive for over 40 years. That is so crazy to even say out loud, but it's true. And in late 1999, 2000, my health had taken a dramatic turn and things didn't look very good. And so my husband, Steve, looked at me one day and said, "What do you want to do with the rest of your life?" And I said, "I want to do something bigger than me. I want to do something that we leave something behind." And so with that, we called all our friends, a bunch of friends, and we brought them together at Florida Southern College. We sat in a room and everybody cried and talked about me dying. It was very melodramatic. And at the end of that, my husband said, "I think we should do camps." Now, my idea of camping is the Sheraton Hotel on Siesta Key. I am not a camping girl, but all the folks in that room said, "That's a great idea. What a legacy." And so Friends Together was born in that room that day. And our original purpose and mission, we held camps for folks infected and affected with HIV, grandmoms raising grandbabies, single moms, single dad, foster families, gay families, straight families, didn't matter, infected and affected with HIV. And we would bring them to camp in Central Florida and we'd help them get a plan to live. And it was amazing. We were already doing, before we were a foundation, tons of advocacy work and that sort of thing. So this was a way to create something that was going to be left behind. In 2003, Steve came home from work one day. He set his briefcase down and he kissed me on top of the head. When that happened, there was always going to be something dramatic. Either he was going to say something that was going to cost a whole lot of money, or he was going to say something that was going to freak me out. In this case, he says, "I have an idea. We're going to go to Tanzania and climb Mount Kilimanjaro as a fundraiser for Friends Together." For those of you who may be geographically challenged, Mount Kilimanjaro is the highest freestanding mountain in the world. It's 19,340 feet to the top and takes most people 7 or 8 days to get there. There was no "we" in that statement, but he was able to convince a number of Friends Together volunteers that it was a great idea. So indeed, in 2004, we went to Tanzania on our first trip. He and a group went up the mountain while Ken and I stayed down at the bottom of the mountain and distributed supplies and met people and began to really, truly fall in love with the country. When Steve came on the mountain, I'd tell people he looked like Moses. He hadn't shaved in 8 days, hadn't had a shower. He did summit, however. And he was carrying these spiral notebooks. And they were his ideas of how we were going to work both in the US and in Tanzania. And so I had all the same kind of feels going on with the work that we had been doing on the ground. So when we got home, we hit the ground running. We started making plans. I started partnering with some different colleges that I worked with. And life is not always fair. So in April 2005, Steve left for work one morning. And a few hours later, a semi-truck driver had fallen asleep behind the wheel and he was gone and I was left with our 2 teenagers, 400 kids that call me Mama Kathy, and this huge plan of all this work in Tanzania. It took a while to regroup, but we did, and for Africa. And in 2006, my son Garrett was 14 at the time, and he trained all year to go back to Tanzania, and he took Steve's ashes to the top of the mountain and left them there. And that really cemented in our work that Africa and Tanzania was going to be a lifelong commitment. We made a commitment, a generational commitment to the Moshi region where we work at. Lots of times people ask me, "Well, why don't you go here and why don't you go there?" And all these other things. We are a small organization. we are a 100% volunteer organization. No one gets paid, including me. And our volunteers, are normal working class people. And so the money we raise is much better spent, directed in one specific region for one specific purpose and one specific group, so that we really truly can make generational change. And we've seen that happen. As far as our camp programs, they lasted until our kids were grown. And amazingly, just miracle, because of the way new drugs came on the market, almost all our kids made it and are now in their 30s, and they are advocates and teachers and chefs and all kinds of things. And our families are going strong. It doesn't look the way it did when we started, but our commitment has never changed. It's unwavering. And that is that our organization is a volunteer organization. We take no government money, and we do the hard work that needs to be done without the red tape. And that's what I love, that everybody comes to this from a different place, from a different background, and they come in and whatever program speaks to them, and they begin working on that. And it's just been an amazing journey. I am so grateful that you found our page. I'm so grateful for all our volunteers that help us make the things we do happen. So check out our work, see if there's anything that speaks to your heart, and we'd love to have you along for the ride.